Hello everyone and welcome to another tutorial video where we're going to be talking about how to make our VTuber model turn their head from left, right, up, down, and also some angle Z, which is the rotation from side to side. Now I am recording this in the future. This is a recording that failed to record at the time, so here I am redoing it. I'm just going to run through the deformers on the side here. So since we're going to be focusing on the head specifically, I have a deformer called Head Body X. There is a head rotation underneath this particular deformer. Now if you go under the head rotation here, there is a whole load of other deformers that make up the head. It's quite important to have the head rotation deformer so that it can allow us to create keyforms for the angle Z later down the line, where we can then rotate the head like this. But first we're going to just focus on making the head move from left, right, up, down, and all the other angles as well. So just to explain what's going on in the head rotation. Literally every single deformer for the head is under the head rotation deformer. I've got something called stars and sweat. That's something you shouldn't worry about right now. That's for the on and off toggles for the future videos. It will happen. I'm sorry it's taking so long to get to those videos, but we will reach that at some point where we will actually go into different facial expressions and such using on and off toggles called special poses. So these are completely irrelevant. Don't worry about these right now. But we have the warp deformer hair front. This contains the two parts of the fringe of my character. So if we was to single that out, you can see that's the right fringe, and this is the left fringe. Sometimes I use deformers as a way of putting other deformers together, kind of like a folder so you know where everything is in Photoshop, that kind of thing. Within the hair deformer, we also have the right hair front physics. So this particular deformer would be more about the actual physics of the hair, and that has to be within the warp deformer for the main hair deformer. The reason for that is because we will move this in the angle X and Y parameters. So we want the hair physics to also move with what we will input in the angle X and Y parameters, if that makes sense. If we don't do that, it basically won't be dragged along with, say, what you have inputted into the angle X and Y parameters. That was a thing that I ended up not knowing about when we were doing the basics tutorials, and yeah, we'll go into that eventually at some point. So the next deformer, we have the hair middle, so it's just a little tuft on the top of my character's hair. And then we got the bangs. So if we were to move that, that's the front bang. That's the right bang. And I've got something called hood front. Again, you don't have to worry about that because that's just part of my character's on and off toggles. So we have a warp deformer for the head generally here too. So this includes things like the ears and the main face, the main head that you see. This also contains things like the blue blush and red blush that I've got for my character for my on and off toggles. So of course we've got the main face deformer. This is quite important so that we can deform it while we're moving the face around to the different angles in the X and Y parameters. We also have a warp deformer for the main eye, so if we wanted to edit the warp deformer for the main eye, we could. Warp deformer of eye contains all of the eyelashes, the eyelid, and all that stuff. Generally speaking, you can probably get away with just deforming the entirety of the face like this. But if you had to, you could go in and edit with the main base deformers for the other individual parts of the face. And of course we got this part of the hair here too, we've got this part of the hair as well, and then we got the head back. So that's pretty much the back of the hair. But yeah, I'm going to try my best to keep it as simple as possible because I am from the future. There is a few things here that might make it look a little bit confusing, but just follow my lead, we should be alright, and we can kind of carry on and make the head turn happen. So the thing that we got to do now is select the main parts that we want to deform for the head turn. I'm going to go ahead and select the main warp deformer for the hair front, as well as these deformers in the drop down. And then we're going to go and select the warp deformer of hair middle. And do the same for the hair bangs. And warp deformer of head. So that also includes the ear, right ear, left ear, and head. Right there. Then we got the face deformer. I don't need to select anything right now, but we'll see if we need the other deformers. We shouldn't, but if you wanted more control over the other pieces of your face, you could highlight the main eye, mouth, and nose and all that stuff. And then we are going to select the hair side here as well, on left and right, and the head back. Now everything should be selected for the head turn. We're going to go on angle X and we're going to add 3 keyforms. Then we're going to go on angle Y and we're going to add 3 keyforms. And then we are going to link them together using this icon. And it also says link parameters. So just click on it and it links up the keyforms like we did with the mouth and eyeball. So that means we should be able to start editing our model to make the head turn. How I normally start things off with is that we start from the middle and then I will either start on the right keyform, the left keyform, the looking up keyform, or the looking down keyform. That after having done those main directions, we can use synthesize corners in the menu here, which can help us making the corner keyforms the right kind of movement. So we're going to start off with looking up. We're going to make the character look up. Start off with hiding the hair, because I do find that quite helpful. So I've got a folder called hair front. I'm just going to make it disappear for a little bit. Now it might also help you to hide the face too, because it can be pretty distracting. If you're trying to make a certain perspective, sometimes it helps to just hide certain elements that might be a little confusing to deal with. The main focus is editing the face here. Now you could edit the face like this, with the ears deforming as well. It's really up to you. Or you could single out the head in this case and just focus on deforming just the head. It's again really up to you. It depends on the level of control that you want over the pieces, but I just wanted to let you know that that is an option. You have all the control that you need to make the perspective you want. So I'm just going to go ahead and start editing the head. But that is the general premise, is that you're really trying to create this other perspective. Now, if you really wanted to, you can actually use this moment to unhide the face so that you can then deform the face too. And select the face deformer, we can start deforming the face. So it's all a process of just working towards something that looks right to you. This part will take a lot of trial and error and figuring out. You're not going to get it straight away, but that is the general premise of how it works. We're going to try and deform the hair accordingly. What I'd like to do is start by just moving them up or down, and then we can start deforming it so that we can get like a sense of motion without having to deform anything just yet. So obviously we'll start off with the main fringe of the character. I'm going to highlight both of these together and I'm just going to raise them up like this. And I'm just going to lower these anchor points here and see what they look like for both of them. That seems to be doing a good job of changing the perspective. You you can already see that there's some motion going on with the hair. It's very slight, it's very little, but it's enough. You can say, you can also almost pass it as being okay. But we can go a little bit more detailed with this. We could shrink it down using the main red bounding box here. So we're going to do it with this one. We can bring this up. Select the other fringe and bring this up too. So we've got some basic motion. That kind of looks like she's looking up. Alright. Now we have to do that with the other bits of hair. We've also got the hair middle. This is a very easy one. We can just bring this back a bit. Again, that helps with the movement. Again, we'll do the same thing as we did before. We're going to select the other bangs here. So this one, these bangs. And we're just gonna move them up. And then we're going to select the other bangs too. I think what I like the idea of doing is seeing how it would look if we brought it down a little bit like that. Yeah, I kind of like that. So it gives you a bit of variation of movement right there. And then we are also going to bring down the back of the hair too. And there you go. So we have the basic movement for an up motion for the face rig. We'll have to say though at this point, because I'm from the future, this outcome that you're seeing right now will be completely different to what you'll see in the future videos. Sorry about the squeaky chair. I'm sorry, but I can't make it exactly as it was. Just to throw that out there, if the next video seems a little bit different in terms of the way my character is turning their head and stuff like that, or looking up and down, that's the reason why. But you can do other things, like I say, like we did with the main fringe. I felt like the fringe was the most important part to edit and make it kind of look a little bit more deformed than usual. But you can get away with actually not doing very much with the up and down movement as far as the hair pieces are concerned. I think like the main key point is to make sure that the fringe deforms in some way. But you can get away with just simply moving the hair pieces into the perspective you're aiming for, and that could be enough, honestly, without having to do any deformation. We've done our up motion. We're going to move on to the down motion. Now we have to do a similar thing again. You could hide everything again like we did before, just so it's visually easier to deal with, because I know that for me anyway it can get quite complex in the way it looks. I'm just going to hide the eye and the mouth and nose and the hair front. So we're going to click on the main head X and Y. So we're just going to bring this head down a little bit, and then we're going to just extend the chin a little bit more. We've already got a bit of motion going on without actually really doing very much. I do kind of prefer bringing it down like I did using the main bounding box, but we can make it a little fuller and use the anchor points just to bring it up a little bit more and deform it. I just unhid the face layers and I now have the warp deformer selected. We're going to edit perspective of the face again. So it might be worth trying it like we did with the top of the head. Just kind of extend it down like that a little bit. Round it off a little bit by using the anchor points. There you go. Of course, we've not done anything with the ears, so it might look a little weird. But for my character anyway, you don't really see the ears, but it would be a simple case of just adjusting the ears. So I'll do that anyway, just to show you guys how I would do it. So if we go on the warp deformers for the ear, just highlight them both. We can again use the bounding boxes to make them smaller, like that. So I just squished the ears to go down from the top, and that's enough to give a little bit of subtle movement to imply perspective change. And then if we're looking down, we can also do a similar thing. We can bring this up a little bit more, like that. Really up to you how you want to do it. And there's no doubt that there needs to be tweaking, but I'm not going to spend too much time on the ears myself because my character just doesn't really you can never see their ears all too often anyway, so it's a bit of a wasted time really for me to be messing around with it. But I just wanted to give you a quick kind of demonstration of what you could do with the ears, but you can certainly do more with it. Currently we have a bit of motion going on with the head at the bottom keyform, so we're going to again unhide the hair front like this, highlight the fringe, and we're going to bring this down like that. So notice that I'm only using the bounding boxes at this point. I'm really trying to not touch the points of the deformers unless I really need to. If there needs to be extreme exaggeration, this is where the deformers come in. In my case, how I see things, it would make more sense if the fringe was wider at the top, like that. Because you'll see more of the top of your head if you're looking downwards, like this. Adds a bit of a subtle change in shape. Now I think this fringe could do with just going up a little bit further. We're going to drag this up a little bit, see what happens. Might just deform it a little bit so there's a slight difference in the way it moves. And then we just pretty much do the same thing as we did before with the bangs and such. We just start dragging the bangs down like that. And the other bangs, we're actually going to drag upwards, so it's going to be the opposite movement. Might be too much actually. So I'm just going to bring it down a little bit. Like that. And then again, the head back will actually go right up like this. And there you go. So we got some basic movement down for the up and down motion. I would honestly say that the easiest keyforms to do here is definitely the up and down motion. When you start going into territory, which is to start looking left and right, that can be pretty tricky. And of course, like, if you're noticing any imperfections, like any bits that are kind of sticking out, you could deform them. In this case, I think it's this bang here that's sticking out. You can actually move the points like this to just hide them and you won't ever see it again. You can even do that for the back of the head here. So you can just bring it in like that. And there you go. May take some trial and error though, of course, if you don't like the way it's moving. Just go in and edit. So we've done the looking down motion and we've done the looking up motion so far. And I'm going to go ahead and go onto the far right keyform here. So this will be one of the hardest parts of the whole process, is trying to create the impression that the head has moved from one angle to another. the up and down motion pretty much have the same overall angle. All you need to do is just look up and down. In terms of the shape of the face, nothing really changes very much. But when you're from a side view, your cheek might kind of peek out a little bit more than usual from one direction. And it might also make the chin a little bit more kind of to the right in this case. So we're just going to try and make that happen. Just to start things off, always just scooch everything to the right. Like this. Might be a little harder to see the transition, so it might be best to just snap to the keyform so that we got a bit of a idea as to how the motion works. But now that we have like an actual head turn here, we can start using these points to really create a little bit more of a perspective. And like I said about the cheek, we can maybe try and bring this out a little bit more like this. It may take some trial and error, of course, like I say, it may take some getting used to, but we do have a little bit of a simple face change from one side to the other. So there is some slight perspective change from the middle to the right side. Of course, feel free to edit the ears accordingly. In this angle, I would say that the ear would actually be a little bit more hidden from this angle. And of course, the left ear will be dragged over here a little bit further. I mean, you could go so far as to say that the right ear could be just a little bit peeking like that, because that might be too drastic of a movement, but in my case, the ears don't really matter, but I'm just doing a quick demonstration of what I would do with ears, with a character that does have ears. I think also another thing to bear in mind is that I think this ear would be just a little bit wider here too. Because of the change of perspective, the ear would be actually a little bit bigger from this angle. There you go. So that actually looks like it flows a little bit better. Now we have the face, so I'm going to unhide all the face assets, and we're just going to drag this along as well. Of course, if you really want to, you can actually change the perspective of the eye and see how it looks from this angle. And how the mouth would open and close too. Like I say, if you would like more control over the deformation of individual elements of the face, so in this case, I'm thinking that it might be kind of cool to use the mouth deformer here. We need to obviously make some keyforms for it though, so I'm just going to add 3 keyforms. Ignore that, doesn't really matter. We can actually go ahead and deform the mouth a little bit. And it's kind of cool because really you don't have to deform too much of the face if you don't want to, but you can make it a little bit more elaborate. It's really up to you in terms of how much refinement you want for your model. But before we do anything more with the face, I do believe that adding the hair will help. So we're going to make the hair reappear. And what I'm going to do is, because it's such a drastic movement from the middle to right movement, the right keyform, I'm just going to highlight every hair deformer and I'm just going to drag it all to the right. Now of course we need to add more movement to imply perspective, but like I say, I do find that scooching everything first and then adding the deformations is the best way to go. So again, if we use the bounding box, just bring it in a little bit like that. On the right side of the bang, do a similar thing too. Bring it in. The other bang, bring that in. And then the head back, we can bring that in too. Like I say, very basic movement, but there is a slight head turn going on. Now, the thing I would like to do with this fringe though, now that we've done some simple deformation, I think it would be kind of cool to start working on the possible deformation that could be made with this perspective. And as you can see, I am scrubbing along from the middle keyform to the right keyform so that I can see how it transitions from one form to the other. If I think it looks a little unnatural, I'll edit it accordingly. Sometimes just trying things out just to see what the problem could be is a good idea. So in this case, I'm going to really try and start deforming elements. So there is like a slight shape change. It does make it a little difficult to get a proper reading though, because obviously you're looking at the model while also looking at the keyforms, like, because you need to make sure that it is actually doing the transition you expect. So yeah, I'm just seeing what looks normal, what doesn't. This is really down to your own perception at this point, like what looks right to you. But for me, I'm just trying to go with what I feel is right in terms of perspective. And this can easily take a very long time just to refine and get right. I think it's possibly the bottom here that I'm not really agreeing with, so I'm just gonna move it a little bit. Back a little bit more. Because I think what's happening here is that you would have a little bit more wideness on this part here of the hair, but as far as this part here of the hair, it would make more sense if it was a little bit more tucked away. So I think that's really what I'm trying to go for here, is for things to just be a little bit more like almost wider here. Perspective isn't an easy thing, there's no getting away from that, but with practice you can get a little bit better at it. I'd say that looks a little bit better. I do feel though that the face at this point, now that I've got the hair in place, it might be a little bit too exaggerated to the right, so I think I'll just bring it back a little bit. Yeah, that's some basic right head movement. Now we're going to actually do something with this side of the hair a little bit more, including this one here. I think I'm just going to do something a little bit different with that, just kind of do something a little bit slight. Because you're not really going to notice the top of the head very much. Yeah, I kind of like that, that's okay. Now, we're going to start off with the hair front on the left side here. I'm just going to attempt to make this a little wider. So that means we're going to have to deform the middle of the hair here so it corresponds with the wideness that we just added. Because again, it's about perspective, because when you turn your head, you'll see more of this hair. It would kind of be a bit bigger and thicker. Well, wider mostly. But you've got to always make sure, in my case anyway, they are always joined together in some way. Keeping it consistent is important from that sense. We could also bring this a little closer too. like that, so it gives it a little bit motion that wraps around the face a little bit more. And I think that should be okay. Then we'll move on to the bangs here. We can make this wider as well. So let's just do that. Just wrap it around the face a little bit more. Maybe give it a slight flick in one direction like that. And then this next bang here, we'll also make this a little wider. That's kind of peeking out, so we need to deform it so it wraps around. Don't need to do anything too drastic with that one. But we could do a similar thing, just kind of make slight movement going on with the bottom of the hair. Just to imply a little bit more movement. Yeah, I think dragging it to the left was better, really. And then the back of the hair, just bring it in like that, because you wouldn't see very much of the hair from that angle. And we can also widen it from this angle too. Now, of course, you're seeing the bit of the seam here, but that's okay. In my case, it's actually not that bad. Doesn't look too bad at all. But ideally, I think if it was staying consistent with the style, I should have really inked that part there so that you don't have to worry about it so much. There we go, we got some basic movement going on. I'd actually go as far as to say that maybe if we just made this a little bit bigger from the side. Yeah, that's better. There's a little bit more movement going on with the back of the hair. We could also just attempt to deform the hair a little bit like that. I just quite like the idea of just adding some kind of deformation just to give it something that's just less static. That's what I'm trying to do here. We got an up, down, and a right motion. Okay, so now that we've done the right side, I'm going to go ahead and do the left side. We've got to do the same thing. Sadly, there's no way of copying and pasting values that we've done in the right keyform. Make sure, of course, that you're snapped to the left keyform. And then again, we're just going to start scooching it to the left, like we did with the right motion. All right, we're just going to go onto the head parameter, and I'm just going to start scooching it to the left, like we did with the right. Again, it's kind of hard to see, so I think at this point I'm going to actually do something with the nose. We're just going to go and select the nose deformer, and we're just going to click on the main middle of this parameter, X and Y parameter, and then we are going to click on Add Free Keyforms. So we now got keyforms for the nose, and I'm going to go to the far left of the keyform here again, and we're just going to simply rotate the nose in the other direction. And I'm sorry about the knocking in the background. Wow, it's like everything wants to kind of be noisy today. I'm sorry about that. We're just gonna flip the nose, reposition it the way we want it to be. And that's what we've got so far. Now, I know it looks a little odd, and the nose probably needs some adjusting somewhere. We'll go into how we can make this transition a bit better. There are a couple of ways you can do it. In fact, in the next video, I actually use a different method because, like I say, I'm from the future. I know I keep saying this, but it's kind of relevant because it's just stuff that I've learned since having done the other videos. So it's worth noting that there is another way of doing the nose, and I'm going to show you that in this video specifically. But if it looks different in the other videos, just ignore it. Don't worry about it. What counts is what you're seeing in this video right now. We're just going to go ahead and leave it at that, but we're going to unhide the hair. There we go. So I'm just going to scooch it all to the left like this to get started with the whole thing. Now that we have the main left, right, up and down motion, we're going to highlight literally everything that's in this parameter, the X and Y parameter. So to do that, all you have to do is go on this little drop down here that appears and click on select. So it selects every deformer. And then we're going to go into synthesize corners in this little menu here that says show palette menu. Click OK. And there we have the corners already done for us. Now, it may not be perfect, I will say, especially the more you deform your face rig. Your results on the synthesized corners may depend on how elaborate you deform your model. In my case, because I didn't elaborate too much on the deformation of the deformers, it looks like it translated actually quite well. So it's not too bad, but you can still go into the corners of the keyforms here just to tweak things. If you don't think it looks right, you can still do that. But this is kind of like a really nice and quick way of getting the full motion of your head turn in a very quick way. But it's just funny because it does emphasize though that if the simpler you go with the deformation on the head turn using the X and Y parameters, the better the synthesized corners will work. Now, it's just funny because, again, when I think of the previous recording that I didn't record, I had some issues with it. I had to go into it and actually edit it. But I do believe that's what's happened here. It's because of the fact that there was very little deformation being done. It was very subtle deformation that it worked out in the end. So I'm very happy about that. That's really cool. that is where we're at with things. You can very easily just say that this is okay. So we're actually going to fix the nose because, as we know, at the minute, the nose is not transitioning as quickly as we would like it to. Now we're going to just fish for the nose deformer, and we're going to unlink these parameters. Don't worry, it's still got the same settings. But the reason why we have to unlink them is because for some reason it doesn't work with the edit keyforms manually button if you have it linked together. Don't ask me why, it's just the way it is. But either way, all we have to do is click on angle X, have the nose deformer highlighted, and we're going to click on edit keyforms manually. We're going to turn off snap to rounded number, because if we don't turn that off, it's going to snap to one of these lines here, and you don't want that. I'm going to go to -1 right there, just click, and then click OK. Now we've got a new keyform. We link the parameters together again, and click on the far left keyform where the nose transition changes. Make sure that, again, the warp deformer is highlighted for the nose. Go Control, Shift, C, so we copy the values of the nose. And then we go Control, Shift, V to paste the values. And there we go. Now we got to do that for this part here, for this keyform. And then we got to do that for this keyform too. Now that we've pasted it, we can see that there's a far quicker transition from the middle keyform to the left side. Now you may have to adjust things, especially if the nose doesn't look quite right, but it looks fine. I think that actually looks okay to me. But that is one way of fixing the issue with the nose and making it snap to one direction to another very quickly. At least quicker than it was, let's say. Because otherwise, if you didn't have that, all this movement here would have meant that your nose would have been still transitioning from one side to the other. It would, you just wouldn't be able to see it. It would look weird. But at least now that we have it in these keyforms here, that actually allows a far quicker transition. You'd barely notice it, and it just works. Now that we've done the actual main motion for the head, we now have to create the angle Z parameter. So this will allow our head to rotate from side to side. So we're just going to go and look for that. As you remember from the beginning of the video, everything that we just deformed and made the head turn with is within a head rotation deformer. And that's quite important to do. You have to make sure you do that, otherwise you're going to have a hard time with the angle Z parameter. Have a head rotation parameter for this. Highlight the head rotation that contains everything that we just deformed into making the X and Y parameters for the head, and go on Add Free Keyforms. Now, this middle is the default position for your head. The left keyform is when your head tilts to the left, and the right keyform is when you tilt your head to the right. So it's just a simple case of clicking on this left keyform right there. You have the rotation deformer set up, and all you have to do is rotate it as far to the left as you want. And then go on the right keyform and rotate it as far to the right as you want as well. There you go, we got some head rotation. And I think that's about it. Let's try it out. Let's preview it. That's so cool. It looks really cool. I just always think it's such an awesome thing. It really does add more life when you put the time into creating the rotation properly and making the X and Y head turns. It's really worth it when you put the time into it. We finally got the head turning. We finally got the head rotating, we've got the eyes moving, blinking, we've got eyebrow movement, and we also have mouth movement, complex mouth movement going on. Well done for getting this far, everyone. Like, you have at this point effectively made a basic face rig for yourself. You could just very easily not deal with the body, but you can still have like this moving head if you wanted to. But of course, adding some movement to the body will definitely give it a little bit more movement and lifelike qualities to your face rig or your VTuber model, whatever you want to call it. I tend to call it face rig. But generally speaking, we have done the main part of the entirety of this face rig. The next part will be all about making the body rotate and move. The same principles can just still be applied though all around the board as to what we learnt with the head rotation and the turning and everything. The similar sort of thing can happen with the body movement too. Generally speaking, keeping things simple like we did with the X and Y parameters for the body in terms of the deformation aspect of it all is the way to go if you can. Of course, there will be a degree of maybe tweaking things sometimes if you're not happy with one of the rotations or one of the keyforms and the way it looks in the X and Y parameters, that kind of thing. That's really down to your own personal preference, how much you want to actually put a lot of deformation in it. But honestly, synthesized corners is a huge lifesaver, let's say, especially if you didn't do too much deformation like we did with this one. And it helps you give a starting point for your work in general. But in any case, you all have the potential to make your own VTuber model. It's just about persistence, time. It is literally a trial and error process. It's not going to come naturally straight away to you, but with practice and even watching this video a few more times, you'll kind of get the gist of how this all works and how to make these kinds of VTuber models yourself. So I hope that this has all been really helpful in getting you on the path to making your own VTuber model. In the next video, we'll be going into how to make the body rotate along with the X and Y head parameters. And yeah, I hope to catch you all in the next one. Thank you all so much for watching. If you like the video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this in future. I have more tutorials waiting in the wing. I hope to see you all then. Take care of yourselves. And see you later. Bye guys!